Hey, I wanted to have a quick little conversation with you guys about how I paid for how I paid for school. This has been something that people have been asking me about, and so I thought that you and I would sit down and chat about how was I able to pay for school. School, when I decided to go to SNHU, I went to SNHU because it was online. And let me take you back to when it was the pandemic. So during the pandemic, in case for some reason you came upon my content and this is the first time that you've ever seen me, my name is Giovanni. I am a senior. I am two classes away from graduating from SNHU online. My degree is in information systems with concentration specifically in cybersecurity. So, if that's something that you are interested in doing or along those lines, then I might be the person you want to talk to because I've done it. So, this podcast is primarily going to focus around how I was able to. Let me first of all get you guys in a good place. So, we're going to talk about how I was able to pay for school without having to take out massive debt. That may be important to you if that is something that you have been thinking about doing. So, going back again to when this all started during the pandemic. If you saw my last podcast, then I was talking about how being a Navy veteran of 10 years, right? Trying to decide what I was going to do. And I will give you, I'll just disclose since, we're just sitting here chilling with our tea and talking. Let me explain what I did. So, 10 years in the military, you get something called a GI Bill. And I got my GI Bill. And the way that the GI Bill works may be different now. I can tell you about 4 or 5 years ago, this is the way the GI Bill worked. So with the GI Bill, you get a check that is covers your tuition and books, computers, things like that. So when you get your GI Bill, you can use that to go to school. And so a lot of schools, when they are targeting veterans, they will go through and say, hey, you can use your GI Bill here. Come use your GI Bill here. And a lot of veterans do that. Now, here's where I ran into a problem. So I went to a couple of schools before I went to SNHU. One of those schools is in Winter Park, Florida. And I won't go into the name of the school. You can look that particular school up, but that school was very expensive. And I ended up using a large percentage of my GI Bill in trying to go to that school. And I actually made the mistake of going to that school because that school offered, as part of the package when you got to go to that school, you got a MacBook Pro because their whole entire system was designed around MacBook Pros. So like all students who came to the school, you would get a MacBook Pro that would be issued to you from school as part of your tuition. So that's what encouraged me, to be honest with you, to go to that school because at the time I could not afford a MacBook Pro. So I went to the school to get one. I was taking two classes at a time, and those two classes I ended up failing. One, because I did not know how to study, and two, I did not know what dedication it was going to take to get through the school. I didn't have a system really built. So I ended up running out of GI money there. And I remember that was the first beginning of feeling so depressed and like a failure. So if that's you, come here. Let me talk to you. You are not a failure. Okay. Let's be so real right now. You're not a failure. Let me tell you what we're prepared for. So if you're a veteran or maybe you're really young and you're considering going to school, we're going to get to how I pay for school. I think it is important you understand how we got there because the part of how I pay for school, I could easily tell you that. I could write a blog post and you would know that. But what you will not know is how you get to this where you can appreciate going to school. So the school in Winter Park, Florida, I get the notification that I do not have enough money to pay for my next class. Keep in mind that was like $2,000 every, I want to say it was like every 4 or 5 months, somewhere in there. It was like 2 grand. And I didn't have that. And I remember when they gave me the letter and was like, basically, if you can't afford to do this, we're going to have to drop you from the next class. And that was it. And it was just like, hey, you're done with school. And after then, I tried to go through a couple of other schools and try to find my way. I still didn't know how to study. I still was really bad at math, or at least I thought. I really liked science. But when I got in school, it was the systems that mattered. It was not the how much you know, it was the systems. So when the pandemic came, we were in the house, obviously, and I decided May 18th, okay? I decided I was going to go to school May 18th. I know that sounds very specific, but I was like, this next Monday, I'm going to school. At that time, we were getting the stipend checks because everybody was out of work and they were trying to stimulate the keep money in circulation. So each person got a check that was auto deposited by the government. And if you had your taxes filed, they just deposited it into that particular checking account. If you didn't have one, you got a check mailed to you. I did have one. So I got the money from, I think it was like $800. And I remember saying to myself, I'm going to take this $800 and I'm going to pay to go to school. Okay, so it was $866. That's how much it costs to go. And that was a lot of money to go to school. That was a huge sacrifice to my family to take that $800. And there are two of us, right? So it was to take that $800 and to set that money aside so that school could happen. That was the thing. So I sent the check there and I became a online student. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is so that you can build out your own system. Okay. This can work for you. Let me be clear. Come here. I am going to hold your hand when I say this to you. You can go to school and you do not have to have a bunch of debt. It is possible. I didn't believe it, but I am now living proof. And it was based off of this system. And I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just telling you what I did. After you pay the 800 and I think it was like 60 some odd dollars. Once I paid that, and I got my welcome letter to SNHU and got assigned a counselor. And I started talking to that counselor and he was a cool dude. Don't get me wrong. He was absolutely a cool dude. And he helped me to kind of, pick out my first classes. Now, if you have any type of credits, which obviously I did because I came from a previous school, if you have credits from another school, those credits are going to transfer over. So what ended up happening is mine transferred over. Some credits transferred over. If you're starting from scratch, you start from scratch. It's still $866, period. So some of the classes that I were taking, like introduction to math and, computer introductory classes, stuff like that, I had already taken those. So I didn't need to take those classes. So I went through, I have an evaluation. And then I was told how much it was going to cost. And here, if you've waited, we finally made it to 10 minutes into this, but here is what changed for me, and it has changed my life. So when I got the letter that notified me that this is how much it was going to cost every term, okay? And at the time, I'm going to be honest, I didn't know what that meant. So I said term, like how much is a term? And, I asked that to my counselor and he was like, hey, you have a class every 8 weeks. And I said, okay, I can work with that. So I knew that I had to have $866 at SNHU's credited there before my next class. So that was every 8 weeks. Here is what I have done every single week for the last 1,800 plus days. I have paid out $106 every single week. And that's the system. It is not sexy. It is not anything deep. It is something that you can do. Let me explain how I did it. And that does not mean that every single week I took $106. And how I did it was I literally went into my bank and I set up a bill pay and made it a bill, just like you do your lights, your gas, your mortgage, your car note. Okay. I just made it just like that. And every week I had them send every single Friday for the last 1,800 plus days. My bank has sent $106 to SNH. But the president decided that they were going to go through and student loans, people who had it, because there's a certain cap, okay, on student loans. And I had hit that cap. That's part of the reason why I had to do this. And I tell you that part because maybe you're at that same place. Remember, I told you I'd been going through all of these schools? Well, going through all of those schools got my financial aid. And whether I passed those schools or graduated, they didn't care. Maybe they cared. I shouldn't say that. But I can say they got the money. And that's what mattered to them, is that they got the financial aid. They're a business. So when they got my financial aid money, and I kept going and kept going and kept going, and then realized I was at the cap for the bachelor's degree. So for the bachelor's degree, there is a cap of the loan that you can take. And believe it or not, that starts over for your master's, and there's a different cap for your doctorate. But at the time, I didn't know any of this. So when I went in and I kept getting denied for my financial aid, that's when I realized I'm going to have to go to school and I'm going to have to pay for it. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. So going back to what I said, you simply find out it's $866. Okay, got it. So you know every 8 weeks you're going to have to have $866, which I believe it's a little bit more now, but that's what it was. So now that's still a low tuition compared to like 2 grand from before. So in the process of that, I just went to the bank, set it up just like a regular bill. And every single time it went there. Now, I'm going to give you the bad parts of this. I've given you what the good parts are and how you do the system. So, what happens if you lose your job or switch jobs? I have switched jobs 3 times since I've been in school. So, what happens to that $106 while you're not able to go to work? I never filed for unemployment. I just kept looking for a job. So, what do you do then? The money still went. Okay. You have got to stay consistent with the $106. It has got to be, I don't know what bill you have in your life that is as important that if it goes off, let's just say that that bill is your cell phone. It has got to be just as important as your cell phone. And I mean that. Like, you have got to take it that seriously, that if your phone goes off, you don't have communication. So if that's the case, same thing with school. If this is something that you want to do, you're going to have to be willing to put in the work if you're going to pay for this. Now, when I graduate and walk across the stage in November of this year, I will have zero debt to the school and my bachelor's degree is paid for. I never thought I would be that person. So I am telling you that it is possible for you to pay for your school $106 every single week. It is possible. Whether you have kids, I did it while I was sick. I did it when my spouse did not have a job. It still went. It has to go. It is non-negotiable. So if it is non-negotiable, you will get it done. You will be at the end of your journey as well. So I've taken up 17 minutes of your time. And maybe that wasn't as exciting to you, but if you're somebody like me and I'm just a regular guy, so I'm a regular guy, regular job, regular things. I'm nothing special in that respects. I want you to understand that SNHU is possibilities. And if you really want schooling to succeed, you can do it. It is very doable. It is not easy, but it is doable. And with that being said, I will talk to you guys next week. All right. Thanks for coming to hang out with me.